Good afternoon, Sunrise Management Consulting residents. I am the company's marketing director, Heather Schechter, and we are so pleased that you could join us for this resident webinar. While you are staying home to stay safe during this pandemic, we wanted to stay connected and bring you speakers with tips and ideas that you could use. With schools closed and many children doing online coursework, it can be difficult to juggle working from home and helping your child with their virtual classes. This change can also affect your child's social and emotional well-being. And we are all waiting to hear whether we will need to continue online learning this fall. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Kelsey Murray, a reading teacher from Stephen and Harriet Myers Middle School. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Towards the end of this webinar, you can ask some questions using the Q&A feature, and I'm going to kick it over to Kelsey now.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So, a couple things about supporting our students during the COVID-19 closure. During this webinar, I'm going to go over some tips and hints on how you can navigate distance learning with your children at home, what you need to know about distance learning. I'm going to show you how you can access your district resources. I'm also going to provide you some insight from a teacher perspective on how to navigate this new model of learning. And again, answer any questions that you may have regarding distance learning as we go through. So, some information about me. I've worked at Albany City School District for about 5 years at the middle school level. I'm currently a reading teacher for 7th and 8th grade students at Stephen and Harriet Myers Middle School. And I've been on the PBIS committee, which is a program that many schools have adopted to support our students that need some extra push for positive behaviors. We provide rewards and give some supports when students need it. So how are you to talk about your COVID-19 with your children and social distancing? Some points that you should really focus on. You want to make sure that you're giving them accurate information, you're staying calm and listening to your children and how are they perceiving what is happening. You want to offer reassurance, especially for younger kids, because they're going to feed off of your energy. If you are upset or you are frantic, they're going to think that this is a frantic moment that they need to worry about. You should be explaining social distancing with your students. I know it's hard, especially for younger students, to understand. We can't really give hugs, we can't give high fives, we can't go see our friends, we can't go outside. The CDC website has a lot of resources and visual aids that can help you with your explanation. You should also be focusing on positive. You're home with your family. This would never happen. You would never be able to stay home with your family for months on end. Celebrating having that time to do some fun things and activities together from home. Monitor your child's television viewing and social media. As we know, there's a lot of propaganda and hyperbolized media out there. We want to make sure that especially middle school and high school students are looking at them through a critical lens, that they can kind of evaluate if this is a true article or a true statement and give them accurate information and make any corrections to misunderstandings that they're having. You also need to make sure that you're taking the time to talk to your children. So let their questions guide you during your conversation and keep the explanations age appropriate. You want to make sure that you are explaining, especially to younger kids, at a level that they'll be able to understand. So one thing that I personally support is protecting your mental health and well-being of your student. So some things that you can do, especially for yourself too, not just your child, is staying active, even for relatively short periods of time. This has some very positive impacts on your health, both mentally and physically. Get outside, go for a walk, stretch, do some yoga in the morning. This makes it so that you're starting your day on a positive note. Combating boredom, you're going to create daily to-do lists with your students. This will help them kind of script out what their day is going to look like. It gives them chores. It gets them up and off the couch. It keeps them active and makes sure that they're participating in what they need, and that they can give you some insight of what they want to do. Provide some social interaction options. Definitely giving students time to call or video chat or text with their friends and family will also help them feel less isolated, especially during this time when we're supposed to be staying home and social distancing. You can do drive-by visits. You can see each other from 6 feet away. Just make sure you're giving your child time for those social interactions. Practice mindfulness. I know a lot of schools have adopted mindful moments. You can find definitely plenty of apps and videos on YouTube where they are practicing being mindful. It could just be short breathing exercises. It could be, counting exercises. So it just helps students manage their stress and keeps them from getting overwhelmed. And make sure you're shifting your priorities, focusing on activities that your student enjoys throughout the day. So I know our usual schedule, students have school 8 hours a day. Being able to focus on some activities in the middle of the day, just break it up, that your student enjoys, will definitely help protect their mental well-being. One of the biggest tips I've been able to get from parents of things that have worked with social distancing, especially during COVID-19 and doing distance learning, is establishing routines. So your child thrives at school because they have a routine every single day. They know what period they have math class. They know that they're going to start off with their morning meeting in the morning on the carpet. So this disruption is definitely going to kind of rattle your student and your child. So if you haven't already, I know it's kind of like the end of the school year at this point, start making a routine, make a schedule. So when you are making your schedule, I'm going to give you a couple examples in the next slide. You're going to work in some breaks and create time for leisure activities throughout the day. You want to make sure that you're giving your students a say in what their schedule looks like. This way they kind of take ownership in their schedule and they feel like they provided their own input. And also be realistic and flexible as time goes on. If you are working outside of the home and you have to send your child to daycare or you have to send your child to a family member to support that child, make sure that you're being flexible with that schedule and that routine. So some examples I have of schedules and routines that I've seen. This actually is a schedule created by one of my coworkers to support her kindergartner and her 3-year-old at home. This works in some time for them to have free play, have some time on the computer with their computer programs that they have, as well as some quiet time. During those times are when my coworker and her husband are completing their work from home as well. So it's not always together. But yes, there are definitely some times that you have to help a child, especially if they're younger, because they're not so independent. This schedule I have seen posted all over Facebook. Breaks it down a little bit more flexibly. So, it has a chore, it has quiet time, but then it gives options on the right-hand side of what they can do during that time. And then this schedule is a schedule that was created by the Albany City School District for students. They have slotted out times for electives and core classes, as well as office hours. This is just to help students with their own time management. It does not necessarily mean that we expect our students during that time, but our school district did provide that for our students. Another aspect of creating a stable environment at home during COVID closure is definitely creating some expectations and having behavior expectations set for home. So in our school district, we follow our PBIS expectations: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. I know a lot of schools in the area have adopted PBIS and have very similar expectations at school. You can create your own expectations from home, again, getting some input from your child, what they would like their expectations to look like, and this will bring familiarity into your student's day. So we reward and praise students when they have positive behaviors. We are specific when we're redirecting negative behaviors, explaining what negative behavior they are doing and how it can become positive. One thing we should definitely be doing is setting our weekly goals. If you are showing positive behavior 3 times throughout the day, you can get a reward for that. Again, everything is flexible. This all has to work with your schedule. This all has to work with your lifestyle. If you set up something that's unrealistic, that is not flexible, you don't plan for obstacles, it's going to be difficult to maintain. And again, older students definitely work better with to-do lists. Have them put their input in as well. Some examples of expectations. So virtual meeting expectations, you might have something that looks like this. If your child is doing Google Meets or Zoom classes, it might look something like this. So being safe, being responsible, and being respectful. They have all these different kinds of categories where they have to show that they're being respectful, responsible, and safe. You can adapt this easily to your home by breaking it up. This would definitely obviously be a little bit more of a child expectation list with the clip art. But being respectful, how are you respectful in the morning? How are you respectful at meal times, homework, free time, and how are you respectful at bedtime as well? So this kind of makes it more explicit. Most students, again, most schools have adopted PBIS expectations, so this would bring some familiarity to your students' day. If they do not have anything similar to the be safe, be respectful, be responsible model, one thing that you can definitely do is take a look at what your school is doing and then adapt it to your needs. So some weekly goals, again, if we're going to be setting our to-do list, our goals for our student, making a to-do list every day or making a to-do list for the whole week and then splitting it up how it's going to be achievable will definitely make it easier for you to navigate working from home with your student. The picture on the right is a little bit more of a juvenile to-do list. However, it's definitely something that keeps students in line. If they're still improving on that goal, they can click on that box on the bottom, and that will kind of get them to think to themselves, what can I do to make sure that this goal gets accomplished by the end of today or by the end of the week? So what are some things that you should know about distance learning? This is definitely a learning curve for everyone. I don't know any teacher that is happy to be distance learning. And we all feel for you, and we all understand that this is a difficult time, especially for parents at home who are trying to work next to their child while they're trying to do, kindergarten math. It's very difficult. Communicating with your child's teachers frequently will definitely help you during this time. If you are having tech issues, if you don't understand how to help them solve the work that they are given, being open and honest with your child's teacher will definitely get you far during this time. You want to make sure that you're checking your child's Google Classroom or Dojo or Schoology or Seesaw accounts. You want to make sure that they are, especially if they're older students, actually completing their assignments and turning them in. I know a lot of students, once they hit middle school or high school, are kind of like, yeah, I'm getting it done. And since they're more independent, you just kind of trust that they are. So it doesn't hurt to go in and check to make sure that they are completing those assignments and turning them in. And then also internal versus external motivators. This is where it gets really tough, because if your child is not internally motivated to get work done, to pass for the year, I don't have a way to push that student to be motivated. You need to go based off of your own child and what you know about your child. If your child works well with external motivators, go for it. Give a Jolly Rancher every assignment that they complete. Make sure that their teacher knows that they've worked really hard so their teacher can do a shout out to them. Do what you think is going to work for you and your child. That's the sum of this whole presentation, because if it's not going to work for you and your child, then it's not going to help you out in the long run. And then there are 2 different types of distance learning. There's asynchronous, which means that the teachers are posting the assignments. They might post it on Monday morning at 8 a.m., but they do not require your child to log in at a specific time. They'll say it is due by Friday at 3 p.m. Get it done when you can. And this is definitely very supportive of students from home so that they can work around whatever schedule they have as far as technology opportunities. If they're helping you with chores, if they're helping you with siblings, definitely asynchronous learning is more ideal in that situation. Synchronous learning, however, is when a teacher assigns a Google Meet or a Google or Zoom class to take place at a certain time, and they expect all of their students to be there during that time. That's also nice in a way because then students get to see each other, they interact, the teachers can kind of check in on the students and see how they're doing. And they teach their lesson during that time of the Google Meet or the Zoom class. So there are two different, very different kinds of teaching going on during distance learning. It all depends on what school district you're in. It all depends on what works for you and your family. How to access your district resources. So each of your home pages will have online resources. I just took the school districts that each of the Sunrise Management Group has a property at and broke it down a little bit so that it has the link right there for you. Usually on your home page, there will be a bright banner or some kind of call out to make it obvious to you that this is where you can get your online resources for COVID. It helps you with instructional resources. How do you get logged into certain websites? Additional websites you might need to use to support your student with certain skills, such as like ELA or math or science. It'll also provide you with information for childcare support, if they have a lunch and breakfast pickup opportunity, and additional community resources. So once you get on your school website on your homepage, again, this is usually a really bright big banner at the top or some kind of call out that's sticking out like that big red blob there to make it noticeable for families to access. And that is definitely important for you to know, because if your child is saying, I completed all my work, I know how I did this, I know how to do that, you can just give them additional practice opportunities with websites that the school district has accounts with or access to for free, rather than having to pay for a subscription for like an ABC Mouse or something of that nature. And then some final insights on distance learning. Again, as I've said, I'm not an expert at this. What I'm providing to you is some tips and hints. If this isn't going to work for your family, you know it's not going to work for your family. If you think that the scheduling part might work, that's great. I'm very happy that I provided some help for you. But again, this is kind of an unusual time for everyone. Teachers are not happy to be home. Administrators are not happy to be home. And I know a lot of parents are not happy to be home with their students, trying to teach them as well as completing their work. So make sure that you are doing what is right for you and your family to stay sane and keep your family healthy and happy at this time. I know it can be difficult, and I know that it definitely seems like there's a lot more work to be done. And I hope that we are back in the fall, but if we are not, I hope that you can continue off distance learning on a positive note and follow some of these tips and hints that hopefully helped you out a little bit.
Thank you, Kelsey. Personally, we have 3 kids, 3 different ages, elementary, middle, and high school. And we found that it was hard in the beginning, especially to keep track of all the synchronous learning that you talked about. So all the different times when teachers wanted students online at a certain time. And at first we were trying to keep track of it ourselves. And we found for us, with 3 kids and 2 adults, having a printed calendar wasn't going to work. So we established Google calendars and email addresses for each child that we could check so that they could have those calendar reminders pop up, and it would pop up on our calendar, and that was something that helped us. I know a lot of parents have found different ways. We also have some questions here. So it seems sometimes like it's worth letting the kids break the schedule, but doing that too much leads to chaos. Any suggestions on how to balance that?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, is that sometimes it's worth it to let the kids let their hair down a little and have a little fun. But I definitely agree that if you are doing it, it's going to lead to some chaos. One thing that you can do is do it as one of those external motivators. Say, I know on Fridays at 1:00, we have scheduled time to do quiet time, but what if instead we have a movie and we do something fun as a family? If you set it up so it's an external motivator, that might assist your child with, feeling a little bit like things aren't so structured and strict at home.
What do you think about setting up students at home? Is it better to be in a common area or in their rooms?
Oh gosh, this depends on the age. Heather might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but it definitely depends on the age. If they're all elementary school and you are trying to get them all on a program together, if your school has them on iReady or Lexia, trying to get them all logged in together might be easier than you jumping across rooms. But it gets really tricky for kids to be together with their siblings. I know when I was with my brother, I would just play the poking game or, bother each other. So it depends on the dynamic in your household. If you have them in different rooms, I think that would probably be best. But again, that's just off of my experience with my older brother. So I don't know how it works out with your dynamic at your house, if they're helpful for each other or not. Especially when they're a little bit younger, they might be able to, if they're closer in age, they might be able to tutor each other, kind of bounce ideas off of each other, which is always so fun to watch. But definitely don't set yourself up to have them all get into a screaming match.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's so age dependent. Our oldest, who's in high school, she works where she feels like working that day. She picks a room of the house and takes complete charge of her own work. Our son has worked in different places in the house. He's in middle school, but I think he prefers his room. No distractions. He can do his stuff. And now our elementary school child, she's the end of 4th grade. She also likes to work in her room. We are lucky to have enough screens for everyone to get their work done. And then we kind of meet as a family for lunchtime and to try to take a walk. So I think it does depend on the age. I can't imagine having a real young kid at home trying to work while they were needing constant attention. So I think that's a very different scenario. Another question from the audience. Any thoughts on how to shift roles from teacher to parent and back? We are trying to be both, and sometimes it can get confusing and tricky.
For that, I think it probably works best with your routine and your expectations. If you are sticking to your expectations, you're making sure that it is clear and it is set out that during this time we're working on math and mom's going to help you with math, or, mom's boyfriend or stepdad or dad or whoever's at home is helping you with this at this time. It sets it up so that the student knows what to expect. They know who's going to help them. They know who is there to assist them. And then if mom needs to step in because they're not doing it right for dad or they're not acting appropriately, then they know that that's the parent role. Another idea might be to set it up so that during the morning times, you're with the kids and you're focusing on what they need to get done for their morning classes or their, 2 of their core classes. And then setting it up so the afternoon they can have their afternoons to themselves. It's up to, again, unfortunately, a lot of my answers are going to be what works for you and your family at home. I can't speak on what your dynamic is at your house and your schedule at your house as well. I definitely think that setting it up with the expectation of who's going to help you with what at what time is going to set it up and make it much better and much easier for you if you have it in a designated location at that time.
Thank you. One more question. So with having kids of different ages, any thoughts on how to help them understand why our expectations are different for them and why our approach is different for each one of them?
With that, it's tricky because I work with middle school students. And I work in my role, I work with students that have deficits in different areas. So one of my biggest explanations at the beginning of the year is what you think is fair is not always what is actually fair. And talk to them about what's equal and what's equitable, essentially, like, again, making sure you're using that age appropriate language. Just because, your brother is in high school, my expectation for him is different because as a high school student, his workload is a lot different than yours at elementary level. Explaining to your child and just being open and honest and saying, you know what, maybe you're right. Maybe my expectations of him are a lot less because he's going to be an adult soon and he needs to know how to time manage and how to be independent. Whereas you are in elementary school, and being open and fair in your conversation with them, see what their input back is to you. I would be interested to know what they would say if they think that it's because you're not being fair between the three kids. Maybe check and see if the kids have some kind of insight on how you can be fair. And again, like I said, just be open and honest with them if they are really having that big of an issue with it. Again, you're the parent, and whatever works in your household is what is going to work. Explaining to them for sure that this is something we've never done before might be more helpful, and explaining that this is just such a strange time for everyone and you're just trying your best. I think kids can really grasp that understanding of that you're really trying. If you're really putting an effort in, they see that.
As we're coming towards the end of the school year, I've noticed some anxiety about what's going to happen in the fall. Do you have any tips for that conversation, how to keep kids excited about next school year, even if it ends up being virtual?
It's so unknown. I think the biggest thing would be, make a big fuss over summer, have so much fun over the summer. Don't worry so much about summer reading and practicing skills over the summer because everyone's going to be in the same boat in the fall. All the kids are going to be a little behind, and all the teachers have accepted that. It's not going to be anything new. If you make it a big fuss that this is the summertime and we're going to have so much fun, and then you can even, once it gets closer to the fall in August, kind of go back to setting those expectations and those routines as you're getting closer to the school year. Make sure that you're being a little bit more mindful about bedtimes and setting up so that the kids understand that, unfortunately school's not open yet. So we're going to go back to distance learning from our kitchen table. And if you're being, again, open and honest, and you're doing what works for you and what's flexible and what's feasible for you and your family, you just got to try your best. And I think that's really what all the teachers in every single school, our intention is that we're trying our best, and we all are under the expectation that parents are also trying their best, and we all know that you are. No one is sitting at home saying, oh darn, I know that they're not doing anything. We know you're trying. I can't imagine, doing this with 3 kids like you are, Heather, especially at different age levels. It's just, go with the best intentions and see what the day brings.
Wow, that was great advice. I'm not seeing any more questions out there. Do you want any parting words before?
I think I said it all. I think, again, you got to do what works for you and your family. Keep yourselves busy and keep yourselves in a good state of mind, and, making sure that the mental well-being of your child is being taken care of on top of all this. That's definitely probably the number one priority, is making sure that your child is taken care of, and then worry about math later.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to take a minute to introduce our webinar for next week. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Okay. So on Wednesday, June 3rd from 4 to 5, we are excited to be joined by Miriam Duchesne, who's the managing partner of Allant Workforce Solutions. And she's going to provide tips on making a career pivot during the pandemic. Links to register for our webinars are available on our website blog, which you can find at sunrisemc.com. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Good luck with supporting your kids during virtual learning. And thank you again so much, Kelsey. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.